Hello and welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi. My name is James.
And my name is Matt.
And it's that time again. It's the end of Series 4. We've reached the end of our virtual reality series. Matt, how are you feeling today? It's our conclusion episode.
I feel good, James. I feel ready to get back to reality and finally just feel comfortable that I'm in the real world once again.
Yes, it's our last episode on virtual reality. And of course, we're at our awards show yet again. The people have gathered. We've got crowds. All of the people are lined up to hopefully get their awards for their films. It's an exciting day.
James, they're not really there. They're all wearing headsets. We're doing it virtually. I've told you this. It's not a real crowd. They're all in your mind.
Hey, the thought's there though, isn't it? Even if they are just all in our screens.
Well, yeah, it's good to have everyone here with us virtually to celebrate our favourite films from this series and our favourite topics that we've looked at. So, James, shall we get started with our awards?
Yep, let's get stuck in.
So our first category is the most immersive VR technology. I really noticed this later in the series. It was really important to me in VR films was how immersive and realistic and how much VR takes over your body and mind and plunges you into that virtual world. So with that in mind, what are the nominations we've got, James?
So the nominations we have are Strange Days, Existenz, The Matrix, and we're classing The Matrix as like all the Matrix trilogy, right?
The trilogy, sure.
The trilogy. And World on a Wire.
All very good films, all really enjoyable films that we've looked at this series, and all very immersive as well. This is all about fooling the characters and the audience, really, into believing that the world presented on screen and presented to the characters in the virtual reality is real. So let's go through these. Strange Days with the squids on the heads. It took over your mind and then it played you like a video recording, but you were fully in that video recording, weren't you? To the point where, you know, it's causing the characters to really like have a breakdown when they were experiencing the thrill of murder mixed in with their own disgust at witnessing a murder.
Yeah, and I think, well, we are looking at like the most immersive VR technology. This does have a lot of those kind of elements with the squids in Strange Days. But for me, I don't know if it's going to win this category just because it's fully gets you in that moment that you're seeing through the headset. But it's not immersive in the same way that some of these other ones are, in my opinion. Like, you feel everything that the other person is feeling in these recordings, in these virtual recordings that they're viewing, but it's not fully surrounding the characters. I mean, the lead character in that is in the back of a car when he's having one of these experiences and he's talking to someone else. So he's kind of like the immersion is taken away a little bit in moments like that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a fair point. What about another sort of squiddy VR then, Existenz with the game pods that plug into your spine?
Oh, Cronenberg and his orifice-filled Existenz. Yeah, what a film that was. That was fantastic.
So in this, they know they're playing a game, but they don't know they're playing a game, right? Or we don't know which game they're playing. There's a nice twist, obviously. Don't want to spoil it for anyone who's just come to the conclusion episode and maybe didn't catch that episode and hasn't seen Existenz.
If you've just come to the conclusion episode, then what are you doing? Go back and listen to the rest of the series. Come on, guys.
Yeah, fair point. There's going to be quite a few spoilers across the board in the conclusion episodes, aren't there? Anyway, Existenz, they don't know that they're in a game. They think they know that they're in a game. And that game is fully immersive. And they're even... Well, they kind of break character by going into character, which is the game moments. But then in the end, did they even know they were in a game the whole time anyway? You know, because there's a whole extra twist with what game they're actually in. I
mean, I think that's part of the immersion for me. Like any film where you don't know if they're out of the simulation by the end of it, that's got to be up there. And I think Existenz is a strong one for this category, definitely.
And it's a good one for immersion of the audience as well, isn't it? As well as the characters.
And the thing is as well, because the characters do become other people almost, don't they? They become their avatars in these virtual worlds. So the immersion is more than just the senses, it's actually your personality as well. So that's like even deeper.
And that's a weird extra angle to the horror of it as well, isn't it? That they don't know where their personality ends and the character begins at times.
Yeah, definitely. So what about the next one? The pinnacle of VR films, the one that everybody knows, The Matrix and its sequels. What do we think about this in terms of immersive VR tech?
Okay, so for the audience, not much immersion, but we're presented with a world where the entire human population is fooled into believing they're in 1999 Earth.
Yeah, that's pretty good going from all the robots in that, isn't it?
Yeah, they're well immersed. You've got people raised in a virtual world in the Matrix universe. They're completely immersed from the moment they're born. And we talked about all the weird loops there, like who your parents are and whether or not they're your biological parents, and or if they're even a program. You don't know. You're so immersed in the VR world. It's kind of difficult to answer questions like that.
Yeah. And I think because the Matrix is so expansive, and like you said, the whole human population is in this virtual world, that sort of immersion it's massive. I still can't get my head around it when I think about it. And it does freak me out, the whole simulation thing. But yeah, we've come across this so many times, but I think The Matrix is really good at doing that. But of course, The Matrix got a lot of its ideas from World on a Wire. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that?
World on a Wire, absolutely great film. We both really enjoyed this. It's similar to Existenz. You think you know what the VR is, and then there's a twist, but it's a midpoint twist. It happens exactly midway through the film. And it's not really a twist. It's just like the characters come to a logical conclusion about the world they're living in and realize that they're actually, well, they get a little bit of help on the way from the characters in the level below. But it's one of the best kind of levels films that we've looked at, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of sort of like immersion, it does, all the characters are like fully in that world, but throughout it, there feels like there's something off. We talked about that when we like looked at the film. All of the characters are sort of acting in this sort of like weird stilted manner. So in terms of that, that's the reason that the protagonist figures out that he's in something's off. So the fact that he's able to do that, whereas in The Matrix, Neo is sort of given hints about it from Morpheus and is sort of given a shove, whereas in World on a Wire, he's figured it out himself, basically. So maybe it's not quite as immersive. Okay,
so Strange Days, Existenz, Matrix, World on a Wire. What's your most immersive VR technology, James?
Well, it's between two for me. It's got to be either Existenz or The Matrix.
Yeah, for me, it's The Matrix. It's the efficiency of the machines breeding an entire population of humans into VR. So they're born and raised virtually. That's I feel like it can't get more immersive than that. But there's something about Existenz and the trick it plays on the audience as well, isn't there?
Yeah. I think you're right, though. I think The Matrix, just due to obviously the impact of the films and just that sort of really bringing that idea of what if we're living in a simulation to sort of the mainstream and audiences around the world. So I think you're right. I think The Matrix has to win the most immersive VR tech.
Agreed. Well done, Matrix.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
Okay, so on to the next award. Now, this award, we've called it the NotJust A Headset Award. And throughout the series, we've come across lots of virtual reality sort of technology. And when you talk about VR, usually you think Oculus Rift, some sort of headset, a visor. So let's talk about some of these other films which have headsets, but the way they look is just something a bit different. So what do we have in this category, Matt?
So in this category, we've got Ready Player One, Johnny Mnemonic, Brainstorm, and Sword Art Online.
Some lovely headsets there.
Yeah, some cool gear that you can strap on and jack into the virtual world. So let's start with Ready Player One. What did you think about the way Wade enters the Oasis?
Well, it's great VR tech in terms of just I love the sort of the omnidirectional treadmill that he's on. So I thought that was a really good idea. But when it comes down to the look of the headset and it being not just an ordinary headset, it does look like an ordinary headset. I mean, we can't get around that, but that kind of like, it gives it that root in a potential reality. But it doesn't look as cool as it could. That's what I'm saying.
The headset itself, I agree, but for me, it's everything else. You mentioned the treadmill, the gloves. There's a whole like ritual that he goes through, like putting that outfit on, and halfway through the film, he gets like the fancier bodysuit, doesn't he? Because he wins the award. So they've got this like haptic feedback bodysuit. There's lots of like little add-ons that make it, well, it's quite gamified, isn't it? Which is appropriate for the plot of the film. But he gets all these little upgrades, and it feels like leveling up in a video game. So I quite like that element. You're right, though. The headset itself left a little bit to be desired, especially compared to the next film in this category, right? Johnny Mnemonic, that pure stainless steel visor that he straps on his head.
Super 90s.
Yeah.
Like, the look of that is so super 90s. Like, do you remember those sunglasses you used to be able to get?
Oh,
And
hell
they were
yeah.
kind of like that. Yeah.
And the Doc's sunglasses in the future, in Back to the Future 2, he's got the same like solid stainless steel look.
I mean, this is scoring points for Johnny Mnemonic, isn't it? All that kind of like reference. But at the same time, it does date it a bit. But it does look cool. I mean, he's got the, like we said with Ready Player One, like in Johnny Mnemonic, he's got the gloves and he's doing all of that crazy stuff when he's hacking into the servers and stuff. So I think all of that look makes it not just a headset. But when he's actually in there, he doesn't have the same sort of feedback and you can't feel it in the same way that Wade can in Ready Player One. So I think that would knock off a few points for Johnny Mnemonic.
Sure. Okay. What about Brainstorm? I really loved in this film, and we talked about it in the episode, the kind of product development journey you go on with the characters, which is a weird thing to like about a film. Like, I don't think I'd ever say about a film, I love that it displays product development, but it is good, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing with Brainstorm is that it shows you the development of that headset. Like you said, like it starts off as this massive thing on Christopher Walken's head where it's just got wires all over the place.
Well, again, that thing it starts off as is kind of Back to the Future-ish, isn't it? It's like the mind-reading device that the Doc's got in the 50s.
Yeah, but I think with this as well, it's the fact that they streamline it and they make it marketable, because he says basically it could be really small, so you barely notice it. But then the sort of like the marketing guys are like, well, it needs to look like a headset. They need to do certain things to make it more marketable. So all of that element in it, I think it is a film about not just a headset, isn't it? So yeah, that's part of the joy of it.
Yeah. Okay, then the final one we've got in this category, not a film, but a series. We looked at it in our anime episode, Sword Art Online, one of your favourite animes, the Nerve Gear.
I think the Nerve Gear is really good. Like, just in terms of the series itself, you see elements that are coming up on screen, like giving you that sort of, you know that he's in a game, you know that's happening throughout. But also just the idea that this technology could like fry your brain if you try to escape it, kind of thing. It's got all of that element to it. It's got the jeopardy of the headset, but it's also got the immersion.
Yeah, certainly in the earlier episodes as well, the Nerve Gear is ever present and often talked about, and the characters are often referring to it, but you don't actually see it very often. You see very brief flashbacks to when Kirito first put it on and stuff like that, but they're always aware of it, and it's just like looming there, threatening to microwave their brain at any moment.
Yeah, and all the clever things they do are sort of like the views, the point of view shots and stuff like that, and curving it. I think that is why it deserves to be in this category.
Okay, so what's the award going to for you?
Brainstorm straight away, just because that film is about not just a headset. It's more than that, and it's all the things that they sort of experience when they've got those headsets on. They're like, I mean, you feel going to the afterlife in it, don't you? And all this kind of stuff in the film. So yeah, I think it's the one.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, isn't it? I was kind of maybe leaning towards Ready Player One a little bit because of the gamification of it, which I quite like. But yeah, the conversation we just had reminded me of how much I liked that the business side, which is being portrayed in Brainstorm, and how much detail and focus they go into about the changing headset. So yeah, I agree. It's Brainstorm.
Congratulations to Brainstorm.
Just a little more. Hold a second. I think I got it.
Hey, there it is. You got it.
Okay, Hal, let's slate it. Gordy, follow Hal around to the slate.
So our next category is the best VR superhero. So we looked at a lot of films this series where people go into VR or become aware that they're in VR, and that awareness and knowledge allows them a superheroic ability to fight off the baddies or whatever, or do whatever they want and control the world around them. So what are the 4 nominees that we've got in this category, James?
So the nominees are Neo from The Matrix, Quaid from Total Recall, Sam Flynn from Tron Legacy, and Paprika from Paprika.
Nice. So Neo, the classic Jesus Christ of VR himself, the one, flying around to Rage Against the Machine, stopping bullets in the air, kung fu, even when kung fu's not really necessary. What do we think about Neo?
I mean, he's the guy who, when I first saw the film, had me doing kung fu moves in my front room after watching it on VHS. So, I mean, he's definitely a VR superhero, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's Christ-like and Superman-like, all wrapped up into one. Which I suppose, I mean, Superman's pretty Christ-like as well, isn't he? But yeah, I think not much else to say on Neo, is there? He's the one. What more can you say?
He is a superhero. That's it. So let's look at someone else then. Let's look at Quaid from Total Recall. Arnie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the guy. We're always talking about Arnie. What do you think about him and whether he is the best VR superhero?
So it's Arnie being Arnie, isn't it? That's what we talked about. It was the idea of stepping into a VR fantasy where basically you are Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then
Fantastic.
and then living up to that, just absolutely massacring a group of goons and just blowing their brains out, and then standing in the pool of blood, and then going on a mad adventure to Mars and saving the planet, and just completely writing off the possibility of leaving the VR simulation, accepting your fantasy as the greatest action hero of all time.
Yeah, and the thing with that entire film, it just ramps up and up and up until you get the conclusion. I mean, all of it is action-packed, and obviously Arnie just being Arnie is great to watch in any sort of like sci-fi film. So yeah, I think Quaid's a contender, but he doesn't have the kind of, he's not a superhero per se. He's an action hero.
He's Batman to Neo's Superman, right?
That's a good way of putting it, and that makes me think of like the technology and stuff, and that amazing moment when he's got the heads. I can't even describe it. That robot head that comes out and reveals that he's not actually a middle-aged woman.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely something Bruce Wayne would use if he felt it would give him the upper hand, isn't it?
I would love to see Batman using that kind of technology. Hilarious.
Okay, what about Sam Flynn in Tron Legacy doing flips and all that? It's pretty heavily Matrix inspired, I would say, but he's also got a cool motorbike and a disc.
He definitely does, and he's like skydiving, parachuting off the top of the building, all this kind of stuff. And that's even before he gets into the virtual reality world. So
yep, good point.
Yeah, he's got that kind of like action hero, superhero quality to him. He's a bit sort of James Bond-like almost.
The parachuting's very James Bond-like, yeah. He's got James Bond in the real world, and then he goes into a digital world where he can become even more superheroic. He kind of amps up his own action hero type behavior that he's exhibited in the real world, and that allows him to be more adept in the grid.
Yeah, he gets like an upgrade by going into the grid, doesn't he? So his cool motorbike becomes a cool light cycle.
Yeah. Okay, well, the next one I think is kind of the opposite of Sam Flynn, right? Paprika, in the film Paprika. You were talking about the comparisons to like Monkey, the literary character, talk us through a bit more about that, because I don't really know those references beyond what you told me when we watched that episode.
Well, I think there's that bit, but I think more importantly for Paprika is that she's like the ultimate alter ego. So it's like Clark Kent and Superman, but if their personalities were completely different. So she can, like, the way that she manipulates the virtual space, like this dreamscape, she sort of like dives into things. She dives into someone's t-shirt and then comes out somewhere else, and she just can manipulate the space. And like the monkey moment you were talking about, she's flying through the air on a cloud and becomes that character, and then she becomes someone with like wings who can fly about. She's doing all of this crazy superhero stuff, but she's also taking control of this virtual landscape.
So she's like the superhero that Atsuko wants to be in her dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We talked at length at how amazing the animation is at just expressing now the stuff that you were just talking about, like being able to like jump through people's shirts and on posters and stuff like that. It looks amazing the way she's just part of that dream world and an expression of that dream world.
And she has like her Power Rangers moment as well, when she turns massive and then fights the evil guy. Like all of that kind of stuff contributes to her being a good superhero.
Yeah. Okay, so who's your favourite in this bunch?
Well, I think when we talked about it initially, it's Neo, isn't it? Surely, because he is the superhero guy. Like, if you think of virtual superheroes, it's Neo. He's the one.
That seems like that felt like the right choice. But when we were just talking about Quaid and the way that Total Recall is like a film about that action hero fantasy, for me, I don't know. I was kind of leaning towards Quaid as we were talking about Quaid. It's definitely between those two, though, for me.
Well, shall we break this award in two and give them half each?
Yeah, we can just digitally duplicate it because it's a virtual award anyway.
Oh, perfect. Let's do that.
Control C, Control V, 2 awards. Congratulations, Neo and Quaid.
Well done.
I know Kung Fu.
See you at the party, Richter.
Okay, moving on to the next award, we have Best VR Visuals. Lots of lovely stuff to look at, lots of cinematic treats in this category. So what are the nominees, Matt?
The first one is Tron Legacy. Then we've got Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, The Cell, and Summer Wars.
Oh, there's some very pretty films in this one, aren't there?
Yeah, these are the really elaborate visual treats that we saw this series, and they were a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, starting off with Tron looked great, didn't it? And it was the upgrade from the creative visuals we saw in the first film and just really bringing those to life. And just upgrading everything in terms of the way it looked. What do you think about that, and does it deserve to win?
Well, I was just so happy that Tron Legacy held up visually. There's some ropey de-aging effects, but on the whole, but even that I got over as the film went on. But on the whole, it's a visual and audio visual treat as well, with that Daft Punk soundtrack really, lifting up the visuals of the grid. I just think it's still amazing to look at. And when we talked about the film, the plot is still kind of weak, but this film, much like the first one actually, it just rests on its laurels visually, and it remains a good film because it is so visually stunning. That Wizard of Oz moment where Sam steps out into the grey neon world of the grid that's the same as his dad's arcade but kind of inverted, is an incredible moment, and it's full of incredible moments like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the Wizard of Oz moment thing you were talking about, that's something we've come across a lot throughout the series, just that sort of stepping into a different world and all of that, and all that sort of what comes with that, and that form of escapism. And Eternal Sunshine has all that as well, doesn't it? Because you're introduced to Joel's mind, but the way that you travel around that is kind of, it's dreamlike. It's got that dreamlike quality to it, but it does seem sort of quite magical, and the way he's talking to Clementine, and she becomes kind of like a sort of Scarecrow or Tin Man character for him in this virtual world. So yeah, and I just think there's so many amazing shots and moments and clever camera work that's in Eternal Sunshine. it's kind of rooted in reality. It's the opposite to Tron Legacy in terms of the looks. But I think all of that other stuff in there really, like, you think of the visuals when you think of that film, don't you?
Yeah, it's Michel Gondry at his best. I think, he's a visionary director. He's got an amazing style. And he maybe peaked a little early by making this film as like his second film ever or whatever. And that's not to sort of do him down. I just think it's such an amazing film that no director could realistically top this in their oeuvre. But yeah, he's using his amazing visual style, but also marrying it up with the narrative from Charlie Kaufman perfectly. And those two things work together so well. And again, it's in the same way that like other parts of the film really enhance the visuals. It's the plot and the narrative and the story married up with Gondry's visual style that works just phenomenally well, and it's the thing that you remember from this film even as other things fade from memory, as they do in the film.
Yeah, it all really sort of like melds together well with that one. So what about The Cell then? So this one has been accused a lot of times of being a bit style over substance, but we are talking about best VR visuals, and in terms of style, it looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just sat here and praised Tron Legacy with high praise, and that's total style over substance. I don't think Eternal Sunshine is style over substance. Like I just said, it's marrying the two really, but I think there's nothing wrong with a bit of style over substance. And Tarsem, again, it's another director just doing their thing, doing their visual thing, and just nailing it. This is what I do. These are the visuals that I make. This is a declaration of Tarsem's style, and just putting that on screen proudly, and it's absolutely bonkers. And it's so lavish, isn't it? With all the like, there's drapes and velvet everywhere, but it's twisted and menacing at the same time. I loved it.
Yeah, and it's sort of all the costumes and everything, and the way that like Jennifer Lopez's character keeps like changing the way she looks, and also like Vincent D'Onofrio is just constantly changing from like being a little boy to being this sort of like crazy psychotic guy, and then this demon lord. All of that is just, it's so visual and so great to look at. So I think The Cell definitely deserves to be in this category without a doubt.
And it's crazy that that we're talking about it alongside Eternal Sunshine as well, just because the similarities they have in terms of being like dreamscapes on film, but they're just miles apart visually. They're so different, but they're both totally valid and really interesting ways of presenting dreamscapes on film.
Yeah, all of the ones we've mentioned so far, they look completely different, which I think is part of the joy of like virtual reality films, just that you can create your world and they can be whatever you want. And I mean, the next one we're going to talk about as well has all of that in, and it's an animated film. So again, it's just one extra level of difference.
Yeah, so it's Summer Wars by Mamoru Hosoda. We talked about his film, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, in our time travel series. And again, we're seeing his amazing visual animated style to show us the world of Oz, this incredible digital world where everyone's hanging out. It's basically replaced the internet as the platform by which everyone games, socializes, does business, and it's just this fantastical world. That initial image of the giant cat, like not quite Hello Kitty, but kind of along those lines, with bookcases orbiting it, and all encased in like a white void, is amazing. And then that carries through with all the like fight scenes and stuff, and the avatars, the really creative avatars.
Yeah, it's all really striking in the sort of the world of Oz. But I think also with this one, it's the juxtaposition that it has in the film of sort of the grounded, rustic looking look of the Japanese home that you're shown as well. So it's this sort of juxtaposition of the two. You've got this really futuristic, outlandish visuals of this virtual reality landscape, but then you've also got this grounded family home which has like a lot of history to it. So I really love that about that.
Yeah, and the balance is so important to the plot as well. Like that worked really well. And we talked about that as well, didn't we? That grounding that you just mentioned, that was so interesting, and it served the virtual world really well visually.
So who are we saying for this one? Like, I am really torn here.
Oh, this is quite an easy one for me, but I think I know where you're going to go. For me, it's Tron Legacy. I felt like I was in my 20s again, rewatching Tron Legacy, getting goosebumps when the first Daft Punk overture like starts up, and the narration about the grid, and then we go into the grid and the schematics, and then you just know that you're going to in for this treat of seeing the grid coming to light on screen.
Oh, it is good, isn't it? See, like, my heart wants to go over Eternal Sunshine because I love that film, but we're talking about best VR visuals, and I think you're right. I think Tron Legacy just has something like a bit more, like, almost iconic to it that sums up virtual reality and that kind of space. So I think you're right. I think even though I'd love to give it to Eternal Sunshine, and I'd give as many other awards as I could to it, but I think Tron Legacy just pinches it for this.
Yes. Oh, wonderful.
He actually did it. I'm on the grid.
So our next category is the best reality shattering moment. Moments where characters just suddenly realise the world is not real. I've been living a lie.
No.
So what films and moments have we got for this, James?
Oh, there's some good ones in here. So we've got 13th Floor, the moment when we see the edge of the world and all of that grid. We've got Truman Show, also the moment where we see the edge of the world and Truman gets right up to the end. We've got Open Your Eyes, not an edge of the world, but the moment where Caesar realizes he's in a simulation, basically on top of that building. That's a reality shattering moment for him. And being John Malkovich, that moment when he's in the restaurant and there's loads of Malkoviches. What a moment. So let's start with 13th Floor then. What do you think about this?
So 13th Floor we watched at the same time as World on a Wire, and it's a remake of World on a Wire. And I remember seeing 13th Floor when I was a kid. We talked about this on the episode and I thought it was really, really cool. I don't think that 13th Floor is even half as good as World on a Wire, but the moment where he drives out into the middle of nowhere as instructed to do something that a VR simulated person would never normally do, and he just looks up and sees a whole horizon of digital code and like similar to the holodeck walls, and he's just standing there like a tiny, tiny silhouette at the bottom of the screen faced with this digital landscape. That singular moment was better than any like one moment in World on a Wire, I thought. Which is quite a thing to achieve in that film. So that I really like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really memorable, that moment. And I mean, they do talk about it in World on a Wire, but that's the thing, they talk about it. They don't really show you this visual of this reality shattering moment. And I think that's why we picked 13th Floor to be in this category as opposed to World on a Wire, because you do remember that moment with the grid. Like it's an iconic virtual reality moment. You're going to remember that bit. Okay,
so another very iconic edge of the world moment then is in The Truman Show. So The Truman Show was such an interesting film to look at. You know, it wasn't like, it's not your traditional virtual reality, but it was really interesting to talk about it this series. And that moment where he just, well, there's such build up to it where he's rowing out, or he's sailing out rather, knowing that he's going to find something that will confirm his suspicions. And then he reaches out and physically touches the edge of a fake world.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful moment as well. Like when he's finally just about to be free from this world, which has been trapping him his entire life, and he just hasn't realized. But you're right, the whole journey that Truman takes throughout that film is building towards this reality shattering moment. It's not a reality shattering moment in the same way as 13th Floor, because Truman has his suspicions, he kind of knows, but still the fact that he's reached the end of his world and he can see a door marked exit, and he has that moment when he's talking to Christoph and he's basically talking to his god. All of that it's reality shattering, isn't it?
Yeah, a full breakdown of the constructed reality. And then he just steps out incredible stuff.
It's very emotional.
So in Open Your Eyes, Caesar is standing on a rooftop, basically has a character explain to him that he's dead and he's living in a virtual world. But he has this kind of existential conversation, doesn't he? Because he's still got characters trying to like beg him to stay in this virtual simulation and believe it is the real world. But he's got to realize that he's died and he's living in a virtual reality.
Yeah, and he finally gets the opportunity to get out of this virtual reality. He's kind of haunted himself throughout the film as well, hasn't he? Because he's reliving these moments, but he's turning it into a fantasy. And the fact it is a fantasy, he's not able to live a life in the same way that he could in the outside world. So yeah, it's got all of that to it. The film is like, Open Your Eyes was one of the films I really enjoyed watching this series, and it kind of took me aback a bit how much I enjoyed it. But yeah, it is like, it's a reality shattering moment, but there's so much other stuff going on in that film. Like it goes through a lot of twists and turns as just the structure of it. So yeah, but I think that moment, it is a shattering moment, isn't it?
Yeah, especially the violence of him then shooting some security guards, because it's been a completely non-violent, very like domestic, emotional film, and then there's a very graphic, very realistic shooting that really like is quite shocking, and it works so well the way that it's made into such a shocking moment to complement what's going through Cesar's mind at that time.
Exactly. I think that's the real strength of that, isn't it? Just that juxtaposition again of seeing that violence and not expecting it, and just something being completely foreign to that world. So what about being John Malkovich then? This moment is just brilliant. Everyone always remembers this from the film, the Malkovich bit.
Yeah, the iconic scene where John Malkovich completely breaks reality by going through the tunnel into his own mind and then appears in this mad vision where, everyone is him, and the only word anyone can say, including himself, is Malkovich. And all the words on the menu are just Malkovich. Just absolutely iconic, weird, classic scene from a brilliant movie.
Yeah, exactly. And just the idea of that, like suddenly finding out that people are taking your body over, going into you called it a muddy tunnel in that episode. They're going into the muddy tunnel and then going into your mind and experiencing things from your perspective. It's a crazy idea, but that moment is even crazier than the idea itself, isn't it? Just all of these characters with Malkovich's face on them.
It's so creative as well, because it's such a, it's obviously a really weird concept, but then you have like a narrative problem of, well, what happens when the guy goes into his own mind, because he's got nothing to witness, and you can think through like the writing process a little bit of like the questions they might have asked themselves, or that Kaufman might have asked himself writing that moment. And his solution to that kind of narrative problem is this Malkovich scene, which is pure Kaufman. I think it's just amazing. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good, isn't it? So what do we think is going to win this award then?
Well, for me, it's Malkovich. It's so bizarre and strange that it perfectly it just perfectly captures like a breakdown in reality, even though it's not a virtual reality system in the way that we've seen in so many films this series. It's the best depiction of like a VR glitch that is crashing a system and reality breaking down for me.
Interesting. I think for me, it's Truman Show, just because that moment it's just something which I've always remembered ever since. And just that having that moment where you're talking to God almost, and then saying, no, I'm leaving your world. I'm off. Yeah, that for me, that's the most iconic.
Okay, I mean, it can be another draw. It's really interesting that the two we liked so much are the two less technology-heavy virtual worlds.
Yeah, I think because we are used to seeing sort of so much of the technology aspect, it's refreshing when you have a different sort of spin on it. And that's why this series, we looked at internal realities and sort of constructed reality and artificial stuff. Like, all of that is important in creating this, well, a fake simulation virtual world. So yeah, I think that's why those two deserve it.
Say something, goddammit. You're on television. You're live to the whole world.
Malkovich, Malkovich. Malkovich, Malkovich, Malkovich. Malkovich, Malkovich. Malkovich.
Okay, so being John Malkovich, that Malkovich moment was mad, but let's talk about some even madder things from some of these films that we've looked at over the past few months. So let's give the award to the maddest VR moment. What have we got, Matt?
Okay, so first of all, we've got Johnny Mnemonic and the Digital Dolphin. We've got Virtuosity, Russell Crowe, General, Lawnmower Man, the VR Chimp and the Brain Mowing, and Simone, Al Pacino in lipstick.
Oh my God. These are some brilliant moments. And they've been like highlights for me during the series. Like just starting off with the Digital Dolphin in Johnny Mnemonic. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. It just Jonesy, the dolphin just came out of nowhere for me, but was so memorable.
Yeah, no one ever expects the Digital Dolphin, James. That's how he gets you.
Yeah, and his little headset and his tank and then saving the
He's got a laser, I think, doesn't he?
Flies in this virtual reality and just like defeats the virus. What a dolphin.
And Ice-T's there.
Yeah, Ice-T's there, leader of the resistance. Also like the crazy moment in Johnny Mnemonic when he's talking about all of the, like he wants room service and he wants like the hotel and he has that massive rant. Like Johnny Mnemonic has some mad moments in it.
Yeah, a wonderful film that I don't need to watch particularly soon, but I'm happy I did. Okay, so what about Virtuosity? Russell Crowe delivers the performance of his career as an insane VR amalgamation of every serial killer that's ever lived, conducting a symphony. You loved the scene where he was conducting a symphony in the club, right? I thought it was the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Symphony of Screams. That was a banger.
What other mad stuff does Russell Crowe do in this movie?
Oh, it just seemed like everything he was doing was mad. Like all of his like crazy suits that he got, and he kind of had a touch of Max Headroom to him, and all of this kind of stuff like just made his character more and more crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of this, I think, in particularly 90s blockbuster cinema of the bad guy psychopath really hamming it up. And Russell Crowe has taken that idea and really ran with it because he's a bad guy psychopath, but he's trying to play every psychopath all at once. And he does a fantastic job with lots of truly ludicrous quips and just chaotic energy on screen that make him really compelling to watch.
He's definitely sort of a product of that 90s era, isn't he? Because like you said, when we looked at Demolition Man as well, just thinking about that, like Wesley Snipes' character in that, again, he's a psychopath and he's supposed to be like the biggest psychopath. So he's got all of that craziness to him, and that comes out in the way, in the visuals, the way he looks, and also the spontaneity of it. And I think with Russell Crowe, he's so volatile. You never know what he's going to do next because he is the amalgamation of 100 million different psychopaths or something, which have made up his virtual character. So yeah, I think Russell Crowe does a brilliant job in that, and he's definitely mad.
Okay, what about Lawnmower Man, the VR Chimp, and the Brain Mowing scenes? So we've got the chimp running around with the little sort of headset in front of the camera and the chittering noises of the chimp in the facility near the start of the film, and also those insane CGI visuals of Job using a VR lawnmower to just mash up someone's brain psychically.
I mean, again, we talked about the fact that it was another animal wearing a virtual reality headset, and I think the VR chimp was another great moment which I wasn't expecting. And yeah, the like the fact that they had that in a director's cut as well, and they had a whole extra bit of story about that VR chimp was hilarious.
Oh, I know. We missed out on the deleted VR chimp scenes.
I know, him and Pierce Brosnan just, having a crazy time in the shed.
God, I felt so bad for Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, yeah, he had a great earring, though, which was great.
Oh, yeah.
Super stylish.
And then finally, we've got Simone. Again, I mean, we said Al Pacino in lipstick, but it's very much like Virtuosity. It's Al Pacino in general in this film. Pacino being Pacino, mad, frenetic, chaotic, but particularly the scene where he's just lost all control of the situation. He's putting on lipstick to kiss glossy photos of Simone to give to fans. But he's also like singing to himself and just going completely unhinged as he tries to cover up his own lies.
Yeah, because he's pretending that he's in a relationship with Simone, even though Simone's like not real. And it's interesting, it's another virtual character that we've got in this one. Like Simone is a virtual character, same as Russell Crowe in Virtuosity. So yeah, it's something about having that virtual reality enter your real world is just a recipe for madness. And yeah, Al Pacino running around, like the moment in the car as well, when he's there and he's trying to pretend that she's in the car and she's driving and he's got his seat down, like all of that kind of stuff. It's full of absolutely crazy moments in that film.
So what's the maddest VR moment for you, James?
Oh God, they're all mad, aren't they? I don't, let me think. I think maybe the digital dolphin.
It's got to be the digital dolphin, hasn't it? You just don't see it coming.
He saves the day, doesn't he? They keep going on about...
He saves the day, yeah.
Oh, they keep going on about this mysterious character, and then it's a dolphin. I mean, brilliant.
It's wonderful. It's an absolutely wonderful moment. Thank you, William Gibson.
Yes, thank you for Jonesy, the digital dolphin. Here's your award. We'll give it to you in your fish tank. And yeah,
your grimy algae-stained fish tank that's not big enough for a dolphin to live in.
Maybe we'll keep it just outside so it doesn't get all covered in algae.
Please help me. Jones.
Right, so our next award is the best hidden gem. So one of the best things about doing this series is that we watch films that we haven't seen, and sometimes they're films that aren't that popular or famous, and we really, really enjoy checking them out, and we just have a really good time discussing those films. So what hidden gems have we got this series, James?
So the hidden gems from this series are Empathy Inc., The Zero Theorem, World on a Wire, and Open Your Eyes.
So Empathy Inc. is definitely the least well-known film, I think, that we saw this series. It's something that we love to check out. It's low-budget indie sci-fi, done well, doing a lot with a little.
Yeah, and I didn't know where it was going to go as well. Like it takes you on a few different twists and turns, but all of the acting in it is superb, and just the way it looks, all of it. Like like you said, it's low-budget sci-fi at its best, and Empathy Inc. is quite high concept. And it takes you on a crazy journey.
Yeah, and it's got that fantastic framing device as well that really just pays off so brilliantly at the end of the film with the one-man show or the one-woman show that the character's doing, that you have no idea why it's happening at the start, and it pays off for a brilliant ending.
Yeah, and we looked at it quite early in the series, didn't we? And it had all of that kind of performance element, which we delved into more as the series progressed. And I think that's something which links into like avatars and all of this kind of like stuff that you have in a virtual reality. So I think looking at that film so early on was really helpful for us later down the line.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks very much, Empathy Inc.
Cheers.
So the next one is The Zero Theorem. This one, I mean, it's a bit of a hidden gem, but I mean, it's directed by Terry Gilliam. Like, he's one of the biggest directors of all time. Absolutely beloved, but this wasn't a huge film for him, and it slipped under the radar a little bit, and neither of us had seen it when we came to do it in the series. Yeah,
and when we talked about it, it was quite a cerebral film in terms of what it's dealing with. And again, it's kind of it's typical Gilliam. It's off the wall craziness, but it's grounded in quite a sad story, and all of that kind of like really made it stick with me, and it felt like an interesting use of virtual reality to sort of look at purpose and sort of what the meaning of life is. I mean, a lot of these films kind of deal with similar things, but I think the Zero Theorem really deals with it from a sort of philosophical level.
Yeah, and another one where the themes kind of became quite useful for us in our discussions later in the series as well. There's a lot of stuff about introversion in that film, which became quite a theme that we were looking at in the kind of second half of this series, wasn't it? We've talked a lot about introverts who are using virtual reality as a means of escape or a means of interacting with the world, which is what Christoph Waltz's character is doing in the Zero Theorem.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, of course, because since we talked about like isekai and all that kind of stuff, it's just become more of a thing throughout the series. So what about World on a Wire then? Like, this was the first proper virtual reality film. What do you think about this?
Well, I really, really enjoyed it. And I think what we have to definitely acknowledge here is like neither of us had seen it. It didn't sound great. It's like a 4-hour German made for TV movie from the 70s. Like, it sounded like it was going to be hard work. But it was so good. It was such a perfect version of that kind of a story. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but we have been referencing World on a Wire in, I think, every single episode this series. It was like a foundational VR film for our understanding and reading of VR this series.
Yeah, and it's hard not to acknowledge it, because it has spawned things like The Matrix and like Dark City, and basically any virtual reality film you can think of which deals with a simulation has some sort of harks back to this film in some way.
Okay, so the last film in this category is Open Your Eyes, which is a very interesting one, because I think that loads of people have heard of this, and I had certainly heard of it, but I hadn't seen it. And most people, me included, had only seen Vanilla Sky. So I went into this film wondering how good it could really be because I'd seen Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a sad thing about this film, is that most people do just know the American version with Tom Cruise, Vanilla Sky, but this one for me it's leaps and bounds ahead of that. The way that they're telling the story is such a unique way, but it's also layered in different kinds of reality. So it's got lots of interesting use of virtual reality in a way that we don't see very often, because the plot develops and goes on twists and turns, and you think one thing and then it changes, and it has that break in the middle where everything just goes in a completely different direction. You don't know what you're going to get with this film. But yeah, it's definitely like a hidden gem, I think.
Yeah, really good performances as well. Very believable, humane performances that carry the movie really well and make it far, far superior to the remake.
Yeah, and I mean, the people Tom Cruise, who did the remake, saw this as a hidden gem. Let's put it into the mainstream and do that. So yeah, so I think it definitely deserves to be in this category.
So which one is your favourite of these new recommendations that we'd not seen before, James?
So I was torn between Empathy Inc. and World on a Wire, but just talking about World on a Wire now and just how influential it is and sort of all of the references we've seen time and time again, I think it's got to be World on a Wire for me.
I feel exactly the same way. I mean, Empathy Inc. is so much about what we love about sci-fi. And when that goes well, you know, when you watch one of these low-budget sci-fi films, you don't know if it's going to be good or shit, basically. And when it's good, the payoff feels amazing. And Empathy Inc. is exactly that. But I completely agree. World on a Wire is just like so influential and just a brilliant classic 70s sci-fi movie.
Definitely. So, yeah. Well done, World on a Wire.
Das ist nicht wahr. Sagen Sie, dass es nicht wahr ist.
So we've come to the end of our awards show. The final award. It's a big one. Best Virtual Reality Film. What have we got, Matt?
Lots of nominees here because it's the biggie. So we've got the Matrix trilogy, again, just as a whole. You can't look at these films in isolation. They're too big. World on a Wire, again. Strange Days. The Truman Show. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Total Recall. And Existence.
Oof.
Some biggies
There's
here,
a
James.
lot in there, isn't there? Oh,
Yeah.
God, the best virtual reality film. Okay, let's start with the Matrix trilogy then. It's the iconic one. It's the one that everybody knows. It's the one that melted so many teenagers' minds when they first saw it and had the idea that they were living in a simulation. What do you think about this?
I think something that I can't really ignore here is how much I enjoyed watching part 2 and part 3 for this series, and I really, really wasn't expecting to, because I was so disappointed with them back in 2003. But enough time has passed now for me to really, really appreciate the sequels. It's hard to see. It's still hard to look at them as a trilogy as a whole, because the original, it feels complete and singular and rounded. But I do now believe that they did a good job with the 2 sequels to follow that up. What about you?
Yeah, I think we definitely covered that, didn't we, when we looked at those 2 films? And I think we both had the same response, that there was stuff that we got in that rewatch that we never got when we were younger. Like, there were lots of different sci-fi sort of elements and like topics that were in there. The themes were sort of more compact than I'd first imagined. And yeah, just really sort of diving into those really made me think about all of the great things about The Matrix. And yeah, I think it, like, obviously it's such a well-known trilogy. I think, yeah, it's definitely had to be in this category, didn't it?
Okay, so the next one is our best hidden gem, World on a Wire. We've just heaped on the praise. We hadn't seen it before. It is worthy of also being in the best film category for VR, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because it is like the original virtual reality film, so we had to put it in here. Like, I feel like The Matrix has expanded upon this and on the ideas, but you can't neglect the fact that World on a Wire was there first and had those moments that you can get, like homages in The Matrix with the phone box and things like that. All of that has come from World on a Wire. So yeah, there's a lot in World on a Wire to appreciate.
Yeah, all the reasons we just talked about for the best hidden gem. It's iconic and inspiration to the films that went after it. I would say that some of those films, The Matrix included, that came after it and were influenced by it, did some things much better than World on a Wire.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So anyway, let's move on to the next one, Strange Days. We both really loved this. James Cameron penned it. What do you think?
Yeah, I was tempted to put this into the hidden gems because I'd never seen Strange Days, but we talked about this before the show, and really that's just my own ignorance. I had just missed this film. It's by no means a hidden gem. It's Catherine Bigelow and James Cameron at the height of their powers working together to create a fantastic neo-noir, grimy, pre-millennium detective story with VR. I absolutely loved it. It's dated but not aged. Is that fair to say? Like, it's very much a product of its time, but it's aged fantastically well, especially with all of the racial justice stuff that it covers. That's even more relevant now. Well, as relevant now as it was when it was made. Just a great movie. And as with all films that James Cameron's involved in, it was incredibly long, but I didn't mind.
Yeah, I think the longevity of like how relevant Strange Days is now is really important, because they made that like in the 90s, didn't they? So it's still as relevant now. And I think that's definitely like some points there. But is it the best virtual reality film? I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. All right, then. The next one is The Truman Show, one of our controversial choices, I guess, in that there's no virtual reality. It's a controlled reality created to deceive the main character of Truman. But what a great movie.
Yeah. And how else are we going to talk about it? It's a virtual reality, guys. Come on. It's definitely that. But yeah, this I think the way that they construct the reality in this is so clever, and Truman has no idea that he's living in this fantasy world that has just been put around him without his knowledge. All of that, and just like the way the characters interact, the crazy stuff with the adverts. There's so much in this which make it a great virtual reality film, because it's world building. They've created this world around Truman that is completely believable and so engaging that there's millions of people at home watching it on their TV sets.
Yeah. And like Strange Days, that has stayed relevant with the topics that it talks about. Truman Show was prescient with the way it talks about like reality television and media consumption. It's actually become more relevant with age. I think it's aged even better than Strange Days.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the other Jim Carrey film on this list then. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. You know I love it. What do we think? Is it the best?
I can't believe we've talked about 2 Jim Carrey films this series. When we started this podcast, I wouldn't have thought we'd be talking about 2 Jim Carrey films, certainly not in the same series. But 2 incredible performances from Jim Carrey, career-defining performances, I think, along with the Riddler, obviously. He's amazing in both of these films. And yeah, the virtual world, the dreamscape collapsing around Jim Carrey's character as he tries to catch up with Clementine and save his relationship.
Yeah, and I think the rest of the cast are great in this as well. Like you've got Kirsten Dunst, you've got Elijah Wood, you've got Kate Winslet, you've got all of these amazing actors in there, and they're just so different from any other roles they've really played. I mean, maybe not Elijah Wood. He's a bit of a creepy sort of dude in this, and he's played a few creepy dudes in a few horror films. But yeah, like.
But I don't know if he had when this film came out. I think you're right. Like he was straight off the back of the Lord of the Rings trilogy when this came out, wasn't he? So yeah, you've got people playing against type and rising to the challenge, I guess. Jim Carrey is the most obvious one because he is playing so against type, and that was his career trajectory at the time. But you're right, everyone is doing something they're not best known for and doing it really, really well.
Yeah, and as a virtual world, it's a really interesting one to look at because this was one of the ones which we looked at with internal realities. And I think everybody's experience in a virtual reality is based on sort of their own wants and needs and where they are in their head, basically. So all of that has really contributed to the series. So I think it's definitely worthy of being in this category again.
Miles away from that, though, someone who is playing to type is Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. Just Arnie being Arnie and Verhoeven being Verhoeven. Put those 2 things together, buddy, you got a good film on your hands.
Oh, definitely. And I talked about my love of sort of like Verhoeven's films when we talked about RoboCop in an earlier series. And obviously we talk about Arnie every single time. But yeah, this was a real joy to revisit because it's just so much fun, isn't it? And it's got all this mind-bendy simulation stuff going on. But at the same time, it's just a good action film.
Yeah, it's a good action film about action films. So perfect, really. And we talked about how Verhoeven is great at directing action, but he is a like satirist at heart, I think. And I think, didn't you tell me that his wife kind of urged him to do these bigger kind of blockbuster films, and what a great move from her and from him to kind of cash in on his ability to make interesting action movies that play to the tropes but you know, satirize them at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's got that sort of extra edge to it, as well as being just a great action sci-fi. So on the other end, we've got David Cronenberg as our final nominee for Existenz. So what do you think about this being the best virtual reality film? It's definitely immersive. It's definitely like an interesting one to look at. What do you think?
Just, I think this is an amazing film. I was so happy when we got to revisit it because it had been so long since I'd seen it, and just to see that it's held up so well. I think it's my favorite Cronenberg film. I think it's better than The Fly.
Ooh.
You know, it's amazing. It's squishy and disgusting, and it takes you on such a headfuck journey throughout that it's just a roller coaster ride. And James, lest we forget, Callum Keith Rennie's in this film.
Oh, of course. Can't forget old Rennie, can we?
What did you think of this one?
Yeah, it was great. And I think you made such a great point about the sort of performance element at the end and the fact that they are putting on bad accents throughout the film, but that's all part of this virtual reality they've created. So I think that was an amazing thing to pick up on. And that kind of made me appreciate it even more than just sort of like the stylistic elements of it being sort of like fleshy and gooey with the technology, which is just not what you usually sort of associate with that kind of thing. But it merges all these great elements of like virtual reality and and biology and technology. Yeah, it's Cronenberg. It's good.
Yeah, that accent thing as well. Like we talked about it in the episode, just the confidence and bravado that you have to have as a director to put something intentionally bad in your movie and then have it pay off and have it become something good at the end of the film. It's just mind-boggling that a director would put that in their film and get away with it and do it with such confidence like this. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's so good. So we've got a very hard decision on our hands.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which one are we going to pick? Who's in the running for you?
I mean, I think my head's saying The Matrix and my heart's saying The Truman Show, James.
Oh, I'm kind of like just talking about Existenz now. Like, again, I'm thinking, by all rights, it should be the Matrix trilogy. But then Existenz was so interesting and I had so much fun watching it again. Oh, I don't know.
There was something that I thought when I came out of The Truman Show and we talked about it on the show that I just truly think it's a perfect movie. But is it too removed from virtual reality for us to give the award to? Because I think you're right that Existenz is also definitely in the running there. Because in terms of actual like VR films about VR itself, I think it might do VR better than Truman Show does. But I think Truman Show is the better film, James.
But then I think Eternal Sunshine's a really good film. But yeah, I think in terms of best virtual reality film though, when you think about the best one, it's The Matrix though, surely, isn't it? Like, as much as it's the sort of like the populist choice, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're talking about amazing virtual worlds that you're not expecting, and just all of the things that go into it, the technology, the world building. I think it has to be The Matrix.
Yeah, I think you're winning me over there. We looked at films that came before it, and we looked at films that came after it, and I think we've come away from that agreeing that the Matrix trilogy is the genre-defining virtual reality film series, isn't it?
Definitely. And so many things were inspired by it afterwards, and it was inspired by so many films before. You're exactly right, but I think it's kind of the sweet spot that has been in the virtual reality films.
Okay, I think it's that then, the Matrix trilogy, the best virtual reality films of all time.
He is the one.
Well, sadly, that is the end of our series on virtual reality. It's been an emotional ride, Matt.
It's been fun. I've really enjoyed this series. We've looked at some really interesting, crazy films. And I had a really good time looking at some of the films that maybe we wouldn't have expected. The different paths we went down that took us in different directions, like The Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine, Malkovich, all of those films. But, we saw such a range of films.
Exactly. And we thought this was going to be like a quick series, didn't we? We thought there wouldn't be too much to cover. But as we went on, we just found there was more and more things that we wanted to talk about with this topic and this subgenre. So it's been a really interesting one to explore over the past few months. And of course, there were loads of films that we couldn't cover. Like, there's a plethora of virtual reality films out there. But obviously, we've only got so much time per series. We've had to leave them behind. But maybe we'll revisit virtual reality on Patreon in the future. Who knows?
Speaking of which, if you want to hear more from us while we're taking our break before Series 5, do come and join us on patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi. We'll be putting out a few bonus episodes there during our break.
Yep, so please feel free to come on over there and join in all the fun. In the meantime, if you want to get in contact with us, we are on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Through Sci-Fi or at Through Sci-Fi Pod. You can also email us at journeythroughsci-fi@gmail.com. And yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
If you could leave us a review, that'll keep us, that'll sustain us through this break, as we will miss you so much. So please do leave us a review. Please give us 5 stars and let us know in your review what your favourite episode this series was. That'd be great to see.
Yes, please do. And rest assured, we are going to be busy planning out the new series before long. We haven't decided what it's going to be yet. So if you have any sort of like subgenres you want to see us cover in the future, by all means, get in contact. We'd love to hear from you. But for now, that's it for us and our virtual reality series.
We'll be back soon, but for now, goodbye.
Bye. We'll miss you.